I thought Orlando was the safest place in America. That's what everyone said. Gated communities, private security, families everywhere. I had planned this trip for 2 years. My kids deserved it after everything we went through back home in Portugal. My daughter Clara kept a countdown on her bedroom wall. My son Lucas had already memorized every ride at Magic Kingdom. My husband Miguel joked that we were spending more on this vacation than our wedding cost. But we didn't care. This was supposed to be perfect. Clean house with a heated pool, palm trees outside the window, silence at night. That American dream feeling you see in movies. We felt safe, protected, like nothing bad could ever happen here. Then 3 men dressed as security guards knocked on our door at 10 at night. They had uniforms, they had badges. They had radios clipped to their belts and clipboards in their hands. They spoke with authority, with that cold, professional tone that makes you believe them immediately. They said there was an electrical issue in the house. They said they needed to check the circuit breaker. My husband opened the door. I watched them walk in with heavy boots and blank faces. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't explain it. My stomach tightened. My daughter grabbed my arm. And then I heard the sound I'll never forget. The click of the front door locking from the inside. The metallic sound of a deadbolt sliding into place. That's when I knew we weren't safe. That's when I realized Orlando wasn't what I thought it was. What happened next turned our dream vacation into the worst night of my life. We were trapped inside a house we didn't know, in a country we didn't understand, with our children terrified and men with guns controlling every door, every window, every second. They weren't security guards. They were criminals who knew exactly how to look legitimate. And we had let them in. I'm going to tell you everything that happened that night, how we survived, how we escaped, and why I will never feel safe in a vacation rental again. Before we continue, please comment below what city you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like. My name is Daniela Montero. I'm 38 years old. I work as an accountant in Lisbon. My husband Miguel is an engineer. We have 2 kids. Clara is 10, Lucas is 7. We're a normal family. We save money. We plan things carefully. We don't take risks. That's why this trip to Orlando felt like such a big deal for us. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't reckless. We had researched everything for months. Which neighborhood was safest? Which rental company had the best reviews? Which house had cameras outside and security gates? We thought we were being smart. We thought we were doing everything right. The flight from Lisbon to Orlando took 9 hours. The kids were excited the entire time. Clara kept asking when we'd see Mickey Mouse. Lucas wanted to know if we could swim in the pool at night. Miguel held my hand during takeoff and said this was going to be the reset we needed. The past year had been brutal. My mother passed away in March. Miguel's company went through layoffs. I worked 60-hour weeks just to keep us stable. The kids noticed. They stopped asking us to play. They stopped talking as much at dinner. We needed this. We needed to be together without stress, without work, without grief hanging over us. Orlando was supposed to fix that. When we landed, the heat hit us immediately. That thick Florida humidity that makes your shirt stick to your back. But it felt good. It felt different. We picked up our rental car and drove toward the house. The highways were huge. 6 lanes in each direction. Giant billboards for theme parks and seafood restaurants. Everything felt big and clean and organized. Clara pressed her face against the window and pointed at every palm tree. Lucas asked if alligators lived in the lakes we passed. Miguel laughed and said, "Probably yes." I felt calm for the first time in months. The house was in a gated community called Sunset Palms. We had to stop at a guardhouse to show our reservation. The guard was an older man with a friendly smile. He gave us a map of the neighborhood and a card with the security number. He said to call any time if we needed help. He said the community was monitored 24 hours a day. He said we were in good hands. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Everything looked perfect. The streets were wide and empty. Every house had a neat lawn. There were no bars on the windows, no graffiti, no trash on the sidewalks. It looked like a movie set. Our house was at the end of a cul-de-sac. 2 stories, beige walls, a red tile roof, a 2-car garage, palm trees in the front yard. When we walked in, it smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh laundry. The living room had huge leather couches and a television bigger than any I'd ever seen. The kitchen had granite counters and stainless steel appliances. Upstairs, the kids' room had bunk beds and Disney posters on the walls. Our bedroom had a king-size bed and sliding glass doors that opened to a balcony. Miguel opened the doors and we stood there looking at the backyard. The pool glowed blue in the afternoon light. The water was perfectly still. There was a barbecue grill and lounge chairs and a wooden fence surrounding everything. It felt private. It felt safe. The kids ran downstairs and jumped into the pool with their clothes on. Miguel laughed and went to get towels. I stood in the kitchen unpacking groceries we'd bought on the way. I put milk in the fridge. I arranged fruit in a bowl. I looked out the window at my family. Clara was splashing Lucas and he was screaming with joy. Miguel was sitting on the edge of the pool with his feet in the water. The sun was setting behind the palm trees and everything was orange and gold. I thought to myself, this is it. This is what happiness looks like. This is what we needed. We spent the first 3 days exactly how we planned. We went to Magic Kingdom and rode every ride Clara wanted. We went to Epcot and ate food from different countries. We bought overpriced souvenirs and took 1,000 photos. The kids were exhausted every night. They fell asleep in the car on the way back to the house. Miguel and I would carry them inside and put them to bed. Then we'd sit by the pool with cheap wine from the supermarket and talk about nothing important. We didn't talk about work. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about my mother. We just sat there. It was exactly what we needed. On the 4th night, we stayed home. No parks, no crowds, just us. Miguel grilled chicken in the backyard. I made rice and salad. The kids swam until it got dark. We ate dinner on the patio table. Lucas told us about a dream he had where he rode a dragon. Clara said she wanted to move to America when she grew up. Miguel joked that we'd have to win the lottery first. Everything felt normal. Everything felt light. After dinner, we went inside. Miguel started organizing the tickets for the next day. I helped the kids brush their teeth and get into pajamas. Clara wanted to watch a movie, but I said no because it was already late. Lucas asked if we could swim again tomorrow. I said yes. I kissed them both and turned off the light. I went downstairs. Miguel was sitting on the couch with his laptop open. He was looking at restaurant options near Universal Studios. I sat next to him and put my head on his shoulder. The house was quiet. The air conditioning hummed softly. Outside, I could hear crickets. It was peaceful. I felt my body relax for the first time in a year. I wasn't thinking about deadlines. I wasn't thinking about bills. I wasn't thinking about the empty chair at my mother's table. I was just there, present, calm. I told Miguel I was going to take a shower and go to bed early. He nodded and kissed my forehead. I was in the bathroom when I heard a car outside. It had a strange sound, not like a normal car engine, more like a low hum with a clicking noise. I looked out the window and saw a white vehicle moving slowly down the street. It had yellow lights on top. Slow, rotating lights. It looked official. I assumed it was security. The guard at the entrance had mentioned patrols. I didn't think anything of it. I closed the curtain and got in the shower. When I came out, Miguel was standing in the hallway. He had a confused look on his face. He said someone just knocked on the door. I asked who. He said he didn't know. He said they knocked hard. 3 times. Loud. Official. I wrapped the towel tighter around me and walked to the top of the stairs. I heard it again. 3 hard knocks. Miguel looked at me. I looked at him. He started walking down the stairs. I followed. Miguel looked through the peephole. I stood behind him with my arms crossed. I was still in my towel. Water dripped from my hair onto the floor. He turned to me and whispered that it was 2 men in uniforms. Security uniforms. Black shirts with patches on the sleeves. He said they had badges clipped to their belts. I asked what they wanted. He said he didn't know yet. He unlocked the door and opened it halfway. He didn't open it all the way. I noticed that. Some instinct told him not to. The first man was tall, maybe 6 feet, short brown hair, clean-shaven. He had a radio on his belt and a clipboard in his hand. The second man stood behind him, shorter, thicker build. He had his hands in his pockets. The tall one spoke first. He said good evening. He said they were from Sunset Palm Security. He said there was a report of an electrical anomaly in our unit. He said they needed to inspect the circuit breaker to make sure everything was safe. His voice was flat, professional. No warmth, just facts. Miguel asked if it was urgent. The man said yes. He said if there was a wiring issue, it could cause a fire. He said it would only take 5 minutes. I didn't like it. Something felt wrong. I don't know if it was his tone or the way the second man kept looking past Miguel into the house, or maybe it was the fact that they came at 10 at night. Who does electrical inspections at 10 at night? I stepped forward and asked if they could come back tomorrow during the day. The tall man looked at me. His eyes were cold. He said no. He said this was protocol. He said if we refused the inspection, we'd be violating our rental agreement. He said we could call the property management company if we wanted, but they'd tell us the same thing. Miguel looked at me. I could see he was torn. He's the kind of person who follows rules, who trusts authority, who doesn't want to cause problems. I was about to say no again when the tall man held up his clipboard. He showed us a work order. It had our address printed on it. It had a logo at the top that said Sunset Palms Community Security. It looked official. It looked real. Miguel nodded and stepped aside. The men walked in. I felt my stomach drop. I watched them come through the door with heavy steps. The tall one smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. He said thank you for cooperating. He said this wouldn't take long. The shorter man said nothing. He just looked around the living room. His eyes scanned everything. The couch, the television, the staircase, the hallway leading to the bedrooms. Miguel closed the door behind them. He asked where the circuit breaker was. The tall man said usually it's in the garage or near the laundry room. Miguel said ours was in the garage. He started walking toward the garage door. The tall man followed. The shorter man stayed in the living room. He stood near the front door. He rocked back and forth on his heels. He didn't say anything. I stood there in my towel feeling exposed and uncomfortable. I told him I was going upstairs to change. He nodded, but didn't move. I walked past him and went upstairs. I went into the bedroom and closed the door. My hands were shaking. I didn't know why. Nothing had happened yet. But my body knew something I didn't. I put on sweatpants and a t-shirt. I dried my hair with the towel. I could hear voices downstairs. Miguel's voice, the tall man's voice. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I opened the door and walked to the hallway. I looked down the stairs. The shorter man was still standing in the living room. He was looking at his phone. I started walking down the stairs. That's when I heard the side door open. The side door. The one that leads from the backyard into the kitchen. We never used it. We always used the front door or the garage. I stopped on the stairs. I listened. I heard footsteps. Heavy boots on tile. I walked down faster. When I reached the bottom, I saw a third man standing in the kitchen. He was wearing the same uniform, same black shirt, same badge, but his face was different. Harder, older. He had a scar above his left eyebrow. He looked at me and nodded. He said sorry for the confusion. He said he was checking the exterior panel. He said everything looked fine. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't believe him. Nobody checks exterior panels by coming through the backyard door. Nobody enters a house without knocking. I asked him how he got in. He said the door was unlocked. I said no, it wasn't. We always locked it. He shrugged. He said maybe the wind blew it open. He said Florida weather can be unpredictable. His tone was calm, but his eyes weren't. They were watching me, calculating. I took a step back. I wanted to call Miguel, but I didn't want to turn my back on this man. That's when Miguel came out of the garage with the tall man. Miguel looked confused. He saw the third man in the kitchen and stopped. He asked who he was. The tall man said he was part of their team. He said they always worked in groups for safety. Miguel nodded slowly, but I could see doubt in his face now. He looked at me. I looked at him. We didn't say anything, but we both felt it. Something was wrong. The air in the house had changed. It felt heavier, tighter. The tall man walked past Miguel and stood in the middle of the living room. The shorter man moved closer to the front door. The third man stayed in the kitchen. They positioned themselves like pieces on a chessboard. The tall man put his clipboard down on the coffee table. He unclipped his radio and set it next to the clipboard. Then he looked at Miguel. He said they needed to check one more thing. He said there was a report of a gas leak in the neighborhood. He said they needed to inspect our water heater. Miguel said our water heater was electric. The tall man paused, just for a second. Then he said he meant the HVAC system. He said it's connected to the gas line. Miguel said he didn't think that was true. The tall man's face didn't change. He said he was just following orders. He said if we had a problem, we should take it up with management. I walked over to Miguel. I grabbed his arm. I whispered that we should call someone. He nodded. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. The shorter man by the door moved fast. He stepped forward and put his hand on Miguel's wrist. He said there was no need for that. He said they were almost done. Miguel pulled his hand back. He said he just wanted to confirm with the office. The shorter man smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. He said the office was closed. He said nobody would answer. He said we should just let them finish their job. That's when I heard Clara's voice from upstairs. She called out asking what was happening. She said she heard people talking. I felt panic rise in my chest. I yelled up that everything was fine. I told her to stay in her room. The tall man looked at the ceiling. He asked how many people were in the house. I didn't answer. Miguel said it was just our family. The tall man nodded. He asked if we had any guests. Miguel said no. The tall man asked if anyone else had keys to the house. Miguel said no. The questions felt strange. They felt invasive. They felt like they had nothing to do with electrical inspections. I decided to push back. I told them we appreciated their concern, but we wanted them to leave. I said we'd call the property manager in the morning and schedule a proper inspection. The tall man looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at the other two men. Something passed between them. A silent agreement. The third man in the kitchen reached behind his back. I saw his hand move. I saw fabric shift. And then I saw metal. A gun, tucked into his waistband, partially visible. He didn't pull it out. He just let me see it. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed Miguel's arm harder. The tall man saw my reaction. He saw the fear in my eyes. He smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one. He said we should all sit down. He said we needed to have a conversation. Miguel asked what kind of conversation. The tall man said a practical one. He said they weren't here to hurt anyone. He said they just needed a few things. He said if we cooperated, nobody would get hurt. He said if we didn't cooperate, things would get complicated. The shorter man walked to the front door and locked it. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. That sound. That terrible metallic click. I knew then that we were trapped. Miguel tried to stay calm. He asked what they wanted. The tall man said money. Cash, credit cards, jewelry, electronics, passports. He said tourists always travel with valuables. He said we should make this easy. He said we should think about our kids. When he said kids, I felt my whole body go cold. I looked at the staircase. I thought about Clara and Lucas sleeping upstairs. I thought about them waking up and coming down and seeing this. I thought about them being scared. I thought about them getting hurt. I couldn't let that happen. I told the tall man we'd give them whatever they wanted. I said, just don't go upstairs. He nodded. He said that was smart. He said we were being reasonable. The third man walked out of the kitchen. He went to the wall near the hallway and opened a small panel. He flipped a switch. The Wi-Fi router went dark. The lights on it blinked and died. He closed the panel and walked back. The tall man told us to put our phones on the coffee table. Miguel hesitated. The shorter man pulled his gun out. Not all the way, just enough to show us he had it. Miguel put his phone down. I put mine down. The tall man picked them both up and handed them to the third man. He walked into the kitchen and I heard him open a drawer. He dropped the phones inside. Then I heard running water. He was putting them in the sink, destroying them. The tall man told us to sit on the couch. We sat. He stood in front of us. He asked where we kept our valuables. Miguel said in our luggage upstairs. The tall man shook his head. He said, don't lie. He said rentals like this usually have a safe. He asked where it was. Miguel looked at me. I looked at him. We did have a safe. It was in the closet in our bedroom. We'd put our passports in it, our backup credit cards. About $2,000 in cash. The tall man saw our faces. He knew. He said someone should take him to it. Miguel stood up. I grabbed his hand. I didn't want him to go alone. But the tall man said I should stay with him. He said only one person needed to go. Miguel looked at me. He said it would be okay. He said he'd be right back. The third man followed him upstairs. I sat there on the couch. The tall man stood in front of me. The shorter man stood by the door. Nobody spoke. I could hear Miguel's footsteps upstairs. I could hear the closet door open. I heard voices. Low. Muffled. I strained to hear if Clara or Lucas woke up. I prayed they didn't. The tall man looked at me. He said we were doing great. He said this would be over soon. He said we'd have a story to tell when we got home. His tone was mocking, casual, like this was normal for him, like he did this every week. I realized then that we weren't the first. We were just another house. Just another family. Just another target. Miguel came back downstairs with the third man behind him. Miguel's face was pale. His hands were shaking. The third man was carrying our small black safe. He set it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. The tall man looked at it and nodded. He told Miguel to open it. Miguel said he needed the key. The tall man asked where it was. Miguel said in his wallet. The shorter man went through Miguel's wallet on the side table and found a small silver key. He tossed it to Miguel. Miguel caught it. His hands were trembling so badly he dropped it twice before he got it into the lock. When the safe opened, the tall man looked inside. He pulled out our passports, our credit cards, the cash. He counted the bills slowly. He looked disappointed. He said $2,000 wasn't much. He said we must have more. Miguel said that was everything. The tall man didn't believe him. He told the third man to search upstairs. The third man nodded and walked toward the staircase. I stood up. I said, "Please don't go near my kids." The tall man pushed me back down onto the couch. Not hard, but firm. He said my kids were fine. He said nobody was going to bother them if I stayed calm. But I couldn't stay calm. My heart was racing. I could hear the third man upstairs opening doors, opening drawers. I heard our bedroom door creak. I heard him going through our luggage. I heard zippers. I heard things being moved around. Then I heard something worse. I heard Clara's door open. I screamed. I jumped up and ran toward the stairs. The shorter man grabbed me. He wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me back. I fought him. I clawed at his arm. I tried to kick him. Miguel stood up and tried to help me, but the tall man pulled his gun out and pointed it at Miguel's chest. He told him to sit down. Miguel froze. He sat. I stopped fighting. The shorter man let me go but stayed close. I was breathing hard. Tears were running down my face. I looked up at the ceiling. I waited for Clara to scream. I waited to hear Lucas cry. But I heard nothing. Just footsteps, just doors opening and closing. Then the third man came back downstairs. He was holding Miguel's laptop, Clara's tablet, my jewelry case. He set everything on the coffee table. He said the kids were asleep. He said he didn't wake them. I felt my legs go weak. I sat back down on the couch. The tall man opened my jewelry case. He pulled out my wedding ring. I wasn't wearing it because I'd taken it off to shower. He held it up to the light. He said it looked cheap. He said it probably wasn't worth much. He dropped it back in the case. He went through the rest. A necklace my mother gave me. Earrings Miguel bought for my birthday. A bracelet Clara made me in school. He kept the necklace. He left the rest. He closed the case and pushed it aside. He picked up Miguel's laptop and opened it. He told Miguel to unlock it. Miguel typed in the password. The tall man went through the files. He was looking for something specific. Banking apps, investment accounts, anything valuable. Miguel said he didn't keep that stuff on his laptop. The tall man closed it. He said they'd take it anyway. He said they'd check later. He looked at our credit cards. He asked for the PIN numbers. Miguel gave them. I gave mine. The tall man wrote them down on a piece of paper. He said if we lied, they'd come back. He said we didn't want that. I believed him. He put the cards in his pocket. He put the cash in his pocket. He put the passports in his pocket. Then he looked around the room. He asked if there was anything else. Miguel said no. The tall man didn't believe him. He told the shorter man to check the garage. The shorter man left. I heard the garage door open. I heard things being moved. I heard metal scraping against concrete. He came back 5 minutes later. He was carrying Miguel's camera, the expensive one Miguel bought just for this trip. He handed it to the tall man. The tall man looked at it. He said this was better. He said this was worth something. I asked how much longer this was going to take. The tall man said they were almost done. He said they just needed to make sure we wouldn't call the police right away. He said they needed time to leave the neighborhood. He asked if we understood. Miguel nodded. I nodded. The tall man told us to stand up. We stood. He told us to walk to the downstairs bathroom. It was a small bathroom under the staircase, just a toilet and a sink. He opened the door and told us to get inside. Miguel asked why. The tall man said because he said so. We walked inside. It was cramped. We could barely fit. The tall man said they were going to lock us in for a little while. He said someone would let us out in the morning. He said if we tried to break the door down or make noise, they'd hear us and come back. He said we should think about our kids. Then he closed the door. I heard something heavy slide in front of it. A chair or a table. Something blocking it from the outside. We stood there in the dark. The light switch was outside. Miguel tried the door handle. It didn't move. He pushed against the door. It didn't budge. He pushed harder. Nothing. I told him to stop. I said we didn't want them to hear us. I said we didn't want them going upstairs. He stopped. We stood there breathing in the small space. I could smell cleaning chemicals. I could feel Miguel's body against mine. We didn't talk. We just listened. We heard footsteps. We heard voices. We heard things being moved around. We heard drawers opening. We heard the front door open. We heard it close. Then silence. We waited. I don't know how long. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 20. Miguel whispered that he thought they were gone. I said maybe. He said we should try to get out. I said we should wait longer. He said what if they did something to the kids? That thought hadn't occurred to me. My stomach dropped. I told him to push the door. He pushed. He pushed hard. He slammed his shoulder into it. The door shook but didn't open. He tried again. And again. On the fourth try, something moved. The chair or table outside shifted. He pushed one more time and the door flew open. We stumbled out into the hallway. The house was dark. The living room was empty. The coffee table was clear. Everything we owned was gone. Miguel ran upstairs. I followed. We went straight to the kids' room. Miguel opened the door. Clara and Lucas were both asleep. Clara was on the top bunk. Lucas was on the bottom. They hadn't woken up. They didn't know anything had happened. Miguel stood there looking at them. His whole body was shaking. I put my hand on his shoulder. I told him they were okay. He nodded but didn't say anything. We went to our bedroom. It was a mess. Drawers were open. Clothes were on the floor. Our suitcases were unzipped and emptied. They'd gone through everything. Miguel went downstairs. I heard him trying the front door. It was unlocked now. They'd left it unlocked. He went to the garage. I heard him curse. I went down. The garage door was wide open. Our rental car was still there, but the keys were gone. They'd taken the car keys. Miguel said we needed to call the police. I said our phones were destroyed. He said we'd use the house phone. We looked for it. There was one in the kitchen. Miguel picked it up. No dial tone. They'd cut the line. He slammed the phone down. He said we should go to a neighbor. I said it was past midnight. I said we'd scare people. He said he didn't care. He started walking toward the front door. That's when we heard the car. The same low hum. The same clicking sound. The white vehicle with yellow lights. It was coming back down the street. Slowly. Miguel froze. I grabbed his arm. I pulled him away from the door. I said we should hide. He said hide where? I said anywhere. We ran to the kitchen. We crouched behind the counter. We watched through the window. The white vehicle stopped in front of our house. It sat there. Engine running. Lights rotating. Nobody got out. It just sat there. I felt my chest tighten. I couldn't breathe. Miguel put his hand over my mouth. He whispered not to make a sound. We stayed there, frozen, watching. The vehicle sat there for what felt like an hour, but was probably 2 minutes. Then it drove away, slowly, down the street, until we couldn't see it anymore. Miguel stood up. He said they were checking. He said they wanted to make sure we weren't calling for help. I said we needed to get out of this house. He agreed. He said we'd take the kids and run to a neighbor. I said we should pack a bag first. He said there was no time. I said we needed their passports. He reminded me the passports were gone. Everything was gone. We had nothing. No phones, no money, no ID, no car keys. We were in a foreign country with nothing. I started crying. Not loud. Just silent tears running down my face. Miguel hugged me. He said we'd figure it out. He said the important thing was we were alive. The kids were safe. Everything else could be fixed. We went back upstairs. Miguel said we should wake the kids and leave now. I said we should wait until morning. I said it was too dangerous to walk around at night. He said it was too dangerous to stay here. We argued in whispers. Finally, we agreed to wait until dawn. We'd leave as soon as the sun came up. We went to the kids' room. We didn't wake them. We just sat on the floor between their bunks. We watched them sleep. Every sound made us jump. Every creak. Every rustle outside. We didn't talk. We just waited. Miguel held my hand. I held his. We sat there in the dark, watching our children and waiting for the sun to rise. Around 3 a.m, Clara woke up. She looked down from the top bunk and saw us on the floor. She asked why we were there. I said we just wanted to be close to them. She asked if something was wrong. I said no. Everything was fine. She asked why I was crying. I wiped my face. I said I wasn't crying. I said I was just tired. She stared at me. She didn't believe me. She's smart. She sees things. She said something bad happened. I didn't answer. Miguel said we'd talk about it in the morning. Clara said okay. But she didn't go back to sleep. She just lay there looking at us. I could see her eyes in the dark. Wide. Watching. Around 4 a.m, Lucas woke up too. He said he had to use the bathroom. Miguel took him. When they came back, Lucas asked why the living room was messy. Miguel said we'd knocked some things over by accident. Lucas asked why. Miguel said because we were clumsy. Lucas didn't ask anything else. He climbed back into bed. But like Clara, he didn't fall back asleep. He just lay there. Both kids were awake now, both of them quiet, both of them sensing that something was very wrong. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to explain, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what words to use that wouldn't terrify them more. So I said nothing. We all just sat there, waiting, watching the window, watching the dark slowly turn gray, watching Orlando wake up like nothing had happened. The sky started turning light blue around 5:30. I could see the outline of palm trees outside the window. I could hear birds. Miguel stood up. He said we needed to leave now. I agreed. We woke the kids properly this time. Clara sat up and asked what was happening. I told her we were going to visit a neighbor. She asked why so early. I said because we needed help. Lucas asked what kind of help. Miguel said we'd explain later. He told them to put on their shoes. Clara asked if she could brush her teeth first. I said no, not now. She looked confused but didn't argue. They both put their shoes on. Clara was wearing pajamas with unicorns. Lucas was wearing Spider-Man pajamas. We didn't have time to change them. We barely had time to think. We went downstairs. The front door was still unlocked. Miguel opened it slowly. He looked outside. The street was empty. No cars, no people. Just quiet houses and neat lawns and that early morning silence that feels too perfect. We stepped outside. The air was warm and humid. It smelled like cut grass and chlorine from someone's pool. Miguel closed the door behind us. He didn't lock it. We didn't have keys anymore. We started walking toward the neighbor's house. It was 3 houses down. A white house with blue shutters. There was a car in the driveway. Someone was home. We were halfway there when Clara grabbed my hand. She whispered that she saw something. I asked what. She pointed to the end of the street. A white vehicle was parked there. Same one from last night. The lights weren't on, but I could see the yellow bar on top. My heart started pounding. Miguel saw it too. He said we should go back. I said no. I said we were closer to the neighbor now. He said, what if they see us? I said they probably already did. We kept walking, faster. Clara started asking questions, but I told her to be quiet. Lucas started crying. Miguel picked him up. We reached the neighbor's driveway. Miguel walked up to the front door. I stood behind him with Clara. He rang the doorbell. Nothing. He rang it again. Still nothing. He knocked. 3 times. Hard. We waited. I looked back at the street. The white vehicle was still there. It hadn't moved. Miguel knocked again. Louder. I heard movement inside. A dog barked. A voice said something. A man's voice. Annoyed. The door opened. A man in his 50s stood there in a bathrobe. He had gray hair and glasses. He looked confused. He asked if we knew what time it was. Miguel said yes. He said we were sorry, but we needed help. The man asked what kind of help. Miguel said our house was broken into. The man's face changed. He looked more awake. He asked if we called the police. Miguel said no. He said our phones were destroyed. The man looked at us, at our pajamas, at Lucas crying in Miguel's arms, at Clara holding my hand. He stepped aside. He said, "Come in." We went inside. The house smelled like coffee and dog. A golden retriever came running up to us. Clara reached down to pet it, but I pulled her back. The man closed the door. He locked it. He said his name was Robert. He said he lived here with his wife. He asked where we were staying. Miguel told him our address. Robert nodded. He said he knew that house. He said tourists rent it all the time. He asked what happened. Miguel started explaining. The fake security guards, the uniforms, the guns, the robbery. Robert listened. His face got more serious. He said this wasn't the first time. He said there'd been 3 similar incidents in the past 6 months. He said the HOA had been warned, but nothing changed. He said the real security company was useless. Robert's wife came downstairs. Her name was Susan. She was wearing a pink bathrobe and fuzzy slippers. She looked at us and immediately went to Clara and Lucas. She asked if they were okay. Clara nodded, but didn't say anything. Lucas was still crying quietly. Susan said she'd make them breakfast. She said they must be hungry. She took them to the kitchen. I wanted to follow, but Robert said we should call the police first. He handed Miguel his phone. Miguel dialed 911. I heard him talking, explaining, giving the address. He hung up. He said they were sending officers. He said it would take about 10 minutes. I sat down on Robert's couch. My legs gave out. I hadn't realized how exhausted I was, how terrified. Miguel sat next to me. Robert brought us water. He said we were safe now. He said the police would handle everything. I wanted to believe him, but I didn't. I kept thinking about the white vehicle at the end of the street. I asked Robert if he could look out the window and check if it was still there. He went to the window. He looked. He said there was no white vehicle. I asked if he was sure. He said yes. The street was empty. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. Clara came out of the kitchen. She walked over to me. She whispered that she needed to tell me something. I asked what. She said last night when the men were in the house, she wasn't really asleep. She said she woke up when she heard voices. She said she stayed quiet because she was scared. She said she heard one of the men say something about the back gate. She said he used a remote control to open it. She said she saw it through the crack in her door when he walked past. I looked at her. I asked if she was sure. She said yes. She said she remembered because the remote was white and had a green button. I hugged her. I told her that was very brave. She asked why. I said because she was paying attention. Because she stayed calm. Because that information might be important. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both in uniform. They had serious faces and notebooks in their hands. Robert let them in. The male officer introduced himself as Officer Martinez. The female officer was Officer Chen. They asked us to explain what happened. Miguel told them everything. They took notes. They asked questions. What time did it happen? What did the men look like? What did they take? How did they get in? Miguel answered everything. I added details when I could. Clara sat next to me the whole time. Lucas stayed in the kitchen with Susan. Officer Chen asked if we'd seen any vehicles. I told her about the white vehicle with yellow lights. She exchanged a look with Officer Martinez. She said they'd been looking for that vehicle. She said it was connected to at least 4 other home invasions in the area. She said the men were professionals. They targeted tourists. They knew rental properties didn't have good security. They knew tourists carried cash and valuables. Officer Martinez asked if we could identify the men. Miguel said maybe. He said he'd remember their faces. Officer Chen said they'd arrange a lineup if needed. She said first they needed to process the scene. She asked if we'd go back to the house with them. I said yes. Robert offered to watch the kids. Susan said they could stay as long as needed. Clara didn't want me to leave. She grabbed my arm. I told her I'd be back soon. I told her to stay with Lucas. She nodded, but didn't let go right away. I had to peel her fingers off my arm. It broke my heart. We walked back to our rental house with the officers. The sun was fully up now. The neighborhood looked normal. People were leaving for work. A man was walking his dog. A woman was getting her newspaper. Nobody looked at us. Nobody knew what had happened just a few hours ago. When we got to the house, Officer Martinez tried the door. It opened. We walked in. The living room looked worse in daylight. The coffee table was scratched. There was a dent in the wall where they'd moved something heavy. The bathroom door was broken. The chair they'd used to block us in was on its side in the hallway. Upstairs was worse. Our bedroom looked like a hurricane hit it. Everything was pulled out. Everything was searched. Officer Chen took photos. Officer Martinez dusted for fingerprints. They worked quietly and efficiently. I stood there watching. Miguel sat on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Officer Chen asked me to list everything that was taken. I told her. Passports, credit cards, cash, laptop, camera, jewelry, car keys, phones. She wrote it all down. She said we'd need to file a report with our embassy for the passports. She said we'd need to call our banks to cancel the cards. She said most of the items were probably already sold. She said we might not get anything back. I asked about catching the men. She said they were working on it. She said they had descriptions. They had the vehicle information. But she didn't sound hopeful. I could hear it in her voice. They'd done this before. They knew how to disappear. Officer Martinez came upstairs. He said they found the circuit breaker panel. He said it had been tampered with. He said that's how they cut the Wi-Fi. He said they knew what they were doing. He asked if we'd touched anything. Miguel said only the bathroom door. Officer Martinez nodded. He said that was fine. He said they had everything they needed. He asked if we wanted to stay in the house or find somewhere else. I said somewhere else. I said I never wanted to see this house again. Officer Chen said she understood. She said she'd contact our rental company. She said they'd probably move us to a different property. She gave us her card. She said to call if we remembered anything else. Then they left. We stood there in the empty house. Miguel said we should pack what was left. I said okay. We went through the mess. We found some clothes that weren't taken. We found Clara's stuffed animal under the bed. We found Lucas's favorite toy car in a drawer. We put everything in a garbage bag because our suitcases were slashed. They'd cut them open looking for hidden compartments. Miguel found his backup wallet in his jacket pocket. They'd missed it. It had his driver's license and one credit card we forgot to put in the safe. It wasn't much, but it was something. I found my mother's bracelet in the bathroom, the one the tall man said wasn't worth anything. I held it in my hand and cried. Miguel hugged me. He said we were going to be okay. I didn't believe him, but I nodded anyway. We walked back to Robert's house. Susan had made pancakes. Clara and Lucas were eating at the kitchen table. They looked small, sitting there in their pajamas. Clara asked if we were going home to Portugal. Miguel said not yet. He said we'd stay in Orlando a few more days. Clara asked why. She said she wanted to leave. I said we had to wait for new passports. I said we had to talk to the embassy. She started crying. She said she hated Orlando. She said she wanted to go home. Lucas started crying too. Not because he understood, but because Clara was crying. I sat down between them. I pulled them both close. I said I knew they were scared. I said I was scared too. But we were together. We were safe. That was what mattered. Robert said we could stay with them until the rental company sorted things out. Susan agreed. She said they had a guest room. She said the kids could sleep on the couch. Miguel said we couldn't impose like that. Robert said it wasn't an imposition. He said no family should go through this alone. He said we were staying, and that was final. I thanked him. I didn't have energy to argue. Susan showed us the guest room. It was small, but clean. There was a double bed and a dresser. She said she'd bring extra blankets. She said to rest. She closed the door behind her. Miguel and I sat on the bed. We didn't say anything. We just sat there holding hands while Clara and Lucas ate pancakes in the other room, and Orlando went on with its day like nothing had happened. We stayed at Robert and Susan's house for 3 days. The rental company moved our belongings to a hotel, but we didn't feel safe going there alone. Robert insisted we stay. Susan treated the kids like they were her grandchildren. She made them meals. She let them watch television. She took them to the backyard to play with the dog. Clara started smiling again on the 2nd day. Lucas stopped having nightmares on the 3rd. Miguel and I barely slept. Every sound woke us up. Every car driving past. Every door closing. We'd sit up in bed and look at each other and wait for the danger to come back. But it never did. On the 2nd day, we went to the embassy. It was in Miami. Officer Chen drove us because we didn't have a car. The drive took 4 hours. The kids fell asleep in the back seat. Miguel stared out the window the whole time. I filled out forms at the embassy, passport applications, police reports, affidavits. My hand cramped from writing. They said it would take 7 to 10 business days for emergency passports. I asked if there was any way to make it faster. The woman behind the counter said no. She said we weren't the only tourists who'd been robbed. She said this happened all the time. She said it like it was normal, like we should have expected it. I wanted to scream at her, but I didn't. I just signed the papers and walked out. We called our banks from Officer Chen's phone. We canceled every card. We filed claims for the charges the thieves made. They'd spent $4,000 at an electronics store in Tampa. They'd withdrawn cash from 3 different ATMs. They'd tried to use Miguel's card at a gas station, but it was declined because we'd already canceled it. The bank said we'd get the money back eventually. They said it would take 30 to 45 days. I asked how we were supposed to survive until then. The representative said that wasn't their problem. Miguel took the phone from me before I said something I'd regret. My brother in Lisbon sent us money through Western Union. 2,000 euros. Enough to cover the hotel and food until we could leave. I cried when I picked it up. Not because of the money. Because someone cared. Because someone helped. Because we weren't completely alone. Miguel hugged me in the parking lot of the Western Union. Clara asked why I was crying. I said because I was happy. She said I didn't look happy. She was right. I didn't feel happy. I felt broken. On the 3rd day, Officer Chen called. She said they found the white vehicle. It was abandoned in a parking lot near the airport. It was stolen. The license plates were fake. There were no fingerprints. No DNA. Nothing useful. She said the men were gone. She said they probably left the state. She said cases like this rarely got solved. She said she was sorry. I thanked her and hung up. Miguel asked what she said. I told him. He nodded. He didn't look surprised. He'd already accepted that we'd never see our things again. Never see justice. Never get closure. I hadn't accepted it yet. I was still angry. Still wanting someone to pay. But I knew he was right. It was over. We'd lost. The rental company offered us a refund for the remaining days. They offered to move us to a different house with better security. Miguel said no. He said we were leaving as soon as we got our passports. The manager said he understood. He said he was sorry this happened. He said Orlando was usually very safe. I hung up on him. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want apologies. I wanted my mother's necklace back. I wanted my wedding ring back. I wanted Miguel's camera back. I wanted to feel safe again. But none of that was coming back. Clara asked if we could still go to the parks. I said no. She said, but we came all this way. She said we paid for the tickets. I said I didn't care about the tickets. She said she just wanted one good memory from this trip. That broke me. I looked at Miguel. He looked at me. We both knew she was right. We couldn't let this define the entire trip. We couldn't let them take everything. So we went. We spent 1 day at Magic Kingdom. We rode the rides. We ate overpriced ice cream. We took photos on Miguel's backup phone. The kids smiled. They laughed. For a few hours it felt almost normal. But every time I saw a security guard, my body tensed. Every time someone walked too close, I grabbed the kids. Every time we went back to the hotel, I checked the locks 3 times. I couldn't relax. I couldn't pretend. Orlando had changed for me. It would never be the same. Our passports arrived on day 8. We picked them up at the embassy. They were temporary, valid for 1 year. The photos were terrible, but we didn't care. We had them. We could leave. We booked flights for the next day. We said goodbye to Robert and Susan. Susan cried. She hugged the kids and told them to be safe. Robert shook Miguel's hand and told him he was brave. He told me I was strong. I didn't feel strong. I felt tired. We thanked them for everything. We promised to stay in touch. We probably won't. Not because we don't care, but because they'll always remind us of the worst night of our lives. The flight home was quiet. Clara slept the whole way. Lucas watched movies. Miguel held my hand. I stared out the window at the clouds. I thought about everything we lost, not just the physical things, but the feeling of safety, the belief that the world was mostly good, the trust that people in uniforms were there to help. I thought about how close we came to something worse. What if they'd hurt Miguel? What if they'd gone into the kids' rooms? What if we'd fought back? I played every scenario in my head, every possible outcome. Most of them ended badly. We were lucky. I knew that. But I didn't feel lucky. I felt traumatized. When we landed in Lisbon, it was raining, cold and gray, the opposite of Orlando. Miguel's brother picked us up from the airport. He asked how the trip was. Miguel said it was fine. He didn't tell him what happened. Not then. He'd tell him later, when the kids weren't listening, when he had the energy. But not now. We drove home in silence. When we pulled up to our apartment building, I felt relief. Real relief. For the first time in 8 days. This was home. This was safe. This was ours. We went inside. The apartment smelled stale. We'd been gone 2 weeks, but it felt like months. Clara went straight to her room. Lucas followed. Miguel dropped the bags in the hallway. I went to the kitchen and made tea. We sat at the table. We didn't talk. We just sat there drinking tea and listening to the rain. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up and checked the front door. It was locked. I checked it again. Still locked. I checked the windows. All closed. I went to the kids' rooms. Clara was asleep with her stuffed animal. Lucas was asleep with his blanket. They looked peaceful. I stood there watching them, thinking about how close we came to losing everything, thinking about how fragile safety is, how quickly it can disappear, how easily trust can be broken. I went back to bed. Miguel was awake. He asked if I was okay. I said no. He said me neither. We lay there in the dark, holding each other. We didn't talk about Orlando. We didn't talk about the robbery. We didn't talk about the fear. We just held each other and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. The weeks after were hard. Clara started having nightmares. She'd wake up screaming that men were in the house. I'd run to her room and hold her until she calmed down. Lucas stopped eating. He said his stomach hurt. The doctor said it was anxiety. He prescribed therapy. Miguel threw himself into work. He stayed late at the office. He took on extra projects. He didn't want to think about it. I understood. I did the same. I worked 12-hour days. I avoided conversations about vacations. When people asked how Orlando was, I said it was fine. I didn't tell them the truth. I didn't have the energy. 3 months later, we got a call from Officer Chen. She said they'd arrested 2 men in connection with a home invasion in Tampa. She said they matched the description of 2 of our attackers. She said we'd need to come back to Florida to testify if the case went to trial. Miguel said no. He said we weren't coming back. She said it might help other families. Miguel said he was sorry, but we couldn't. We had to move on. We had to heal. She understood. She said she'd keep us updated. She never called again. I don't know if they caught the 3rd man. I don't know if they went to prison. I stopped checking. I stopped caring. I just wanted to forget. But I can't forget. Every time I see a security guard, I tense up. Every time someone knocks on the door at night, I panic. Every time we talk about traveling, the kids say no. Clara says she never wants to leave Portugal again. Lucas says he's afraid of hotels. Miguel says we'll try again someday, when enough time has passed, when the fear fades. But I don't think it will. Orlando took something from us that we'll never get back. Not our passports, not our money, not our things. It took our sense of safety, our trust in the world, our ability to relax in unfamiliar places. That's what hurts the most. not what they stole, but what they destroyed. The belief that we could take our kids somewhere and just be happy. That's gone now, and I don't know if it's ever coming back. A year has passed since Orlando. We haven't traveled since then. Not to another country, not even to another city in Portugal. The kids don't ask anymore. They stopped talking about theme parks. They stopped talking about beaches. They stopped dreaming about places they want to see. That breaks my heart more than anything. They're 10 and 8 now. They should be excited about the world, but they're not. They're cautious. They're afraid. And that's my fault. That's what those men did to us. Miguel and I talk about it sometimes. Late at night when the kids are asleep, we ask ourselves what we could have done differently. Should we have refused to let them in? Should we have called the rental company first? Should we have checked their IDs more carefully? But the truth is, we did what most people would do. We trusted uniforms. We trusted badges. We trusted that security meant safety. We were wrong, and now we know better. But knowing better doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't take away the fear. It doesn't give us back what we lost. Clara is in therapy now. She sees someone twice a week. The therapist says she has symptoms of PTSD. She has trouble sleeping. She has panic attacks when she hears unexpected noises. She doesn't trust strangers anymore, even friendly ones, even people who are genuinely trying to help. The therapist says it will take time. She says trauma doesn't heal quickly. She says we need to be patient. I try to be patient. But it's hard watching your child suffer because of something you couldn't prevent. Because of something you walked right into. Lucas is better. Kids are resilient. He bounced back faster than Clara. He still has bad dreams sometimes, but not as often. He still asks questions. Why did those men come to our house? Why did they have guns? Why didn't the police catch them? I answer honestly. I tell him some people do bad things. I tell him the police tried their best. I tell him we were lucky because we're all okay. He accepts these answers. But I can see something changed in him too. He's more careful now. More watchful. He doesn't run ahead of us in public places anymore. He stays close. He holds my hand even when I don't ask him to. Miguel is different now. He doesn't laugh as much. He doesn't make jokes. He carries guilt that he shouldn't carry. He thinks he failed us by opening the door, by trusting them, by not fighting back. I tell him that's not true. I tell him he kept us alive. I tell him his decisions saved us. But he doesn't believe me. He looks at our kids and sees what they lost. He looks at me and sees the fear I carry. And he blames himself. I wish I could take that away from him. But I can't. Trauma doesn't just live in one person. It spreads. It touches everyone. I still have my mother's bracelet. The cheap one they left behind. I wear it every day. It reminds me of what matters. Not the things we lost. Not the money or the passports or the camera. But the fact that we survived. That we're still here. That we still have each other. Some days that's enough. Some days it's not. Some days I'm angry at Orlando. Angry at America. Angry at the rental company. Angry at the fake security guards. Angry at the universe for letting this happen to us. Other days I just feel sad. Sad that we can't go back to who we were before. Sad that my kids lost their innocence. Sad that we'll never have that perfect family vacation we planned for so long. People ask me if I regret going. I don't know how to answer that. If we hadn't gone, we wouldn't have this trauma. But we also wouldn't know how strong we are, how much we can survive, how much we love each other. There's something about going through hell together that bonds you. Miguel and I are closer now than we've ever been. The kids are more protective of each other. We appreciate home in a way we never did before. We appreciate safety. We appreciate normal, boring days where nothing bad happens. Maybe that's the silver lining. Maybe that's what we gained. But I'd trade it all to go back. To have that innocence back. To let my kids believe the world is safe. If you're planning a trip to Orlando or anywhere else, be careful. Don't trust uniforms just because they look official. Don't open your door at night unless you're absolutely sure who's on the other side. Don't assume gated communities are safe. Don't assume anything. The world isn't what we think it is. I learned that the hard way. I hope you never have to. If this story touched you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more real survival stories. And remember, stay alert, stay safe, trust your instincts. They might save your life,